The albino boy sprayed chrome painting into his mouth, then stood on the platform holding 2 javelins. He was one of the fiercest warriors in the wasteland, and there were thousands more like him. They all served a man who was neither human nor ghost, the ruler here Immortan Joe, who drank 3 pounds of breast milk every day. Nuclear war had turned the world into a scorched wasteland, and the survivors roamed the desolate land, fighting for scarce resources. In this world of wasteland, women could only be used as breeding tools, and all the beautiful women belonged solely to Joe. Today, a newcomer arrived. Her beauty and health made her stand out in this place because she came from the only oasis in the wasteland green place. A few days ago, Furiosa and her sister were picking peaches when they suddenly discovered a group of uninvited guests. She quietly approached their motorcycles and cut the fuel line with a knife. But just as she was about to do the same to the second motorcycle, after stabbing a man, Furiosa quickly escaped and blew a whistle for help. However, a cliff blocked her path, and she was whipped with a bone whip by the pursuing man, causing her to fall. The group captured Furiosa and quickly drove away. Furiosa's mother heard the whistle and immediately rushed to rescue her daughter, but the horse couldn't outrun the motorcycles. Fortunately, her marksmanship was excellent, and she killed one of the bandits with a single shot. She then rode his motorcycle and continued the pursuit. Following the tire tracks, she caught up with the remaining 2 bandits who were about to return to their nearby base. Worried about accidentally hurting Furiosa, she shot out the motorcycle's tire but couldn't stop the last bandit from taking Furiosa back to the base. The bandit, excited, shouted to meet the leader to claim credit. A healthy and beautiful girl was invaluable in this wasteland, especially since he had discovered a fertile oasis. Furiosa realized the seriousness of the situation and knew she had to silence the bandit to prevent her homeland from being plundered. She secretly rolled the whip hanging around the bandit's neck into the high-speed spinning wheel. Eventually, Furiosa was brought before the leader Dementus. The doctor found that the girl was not only healthy but also well-nourished, making Dementus realize she must have lived in a resource-rich place. But no matter how they questioned her, Furiosa remained silent. The only man who knew the location of the oasis had a broken neck and couldn't speak. Others tried to make him draw a map of the oasis, but Furiosa kicked his neck, sending him to God early. With nothing to show for it, Dementus can only ordered his men to put Furiosa under guard first. Meanwhile, Furiosa's mother had changed into the dead bandits' clothes and infiltrated the camp under the cover of a sandstorm. Inside the tent, a man was enjoying peaches taken from Furiosa, but the next second, Furiosa's mother took Furiosa and began to flee. The bandits immediately opened fire, hitting the spare fuel tank behind her. She endured the burning on her back, only extinguishing the flames once she had run far enough. However, blood continued to flow from her wounds. Dementus and his men, along with hunting dogs, quickly followed the blood trail. As they passed through a canyon, Furiosa's mother decided to stay behind and snipe the enemies, giving Furiosa time to escape. Although she killed many enemies using the advantageous terrain, the cunning Dementus ordered his men to flank her from behind. Outnumbered, Furiosa's mother was soon captured. Seeing her mother tied to a stake and tortured, Furiosa rushed forward in desperation, falling into Dementus's trap. He threatened Furiosa with her mother's life, demanding she reveal the location of the oasis. The insane Dementus forced Furiosa to watch her mother die before her eyes. Furiosa was then locked in a cage, following Dementus's army and witnessing their endless killing and plundering. Those who wanted to join them had to fight each other, as only the most evil could survive in the wasteland. With a red flare exploding in the sky, the arrogant Dementus was about to face a significant setback. The flare was fired by a pale-skinned boy with an antenna on his head, seemingly mentally unstable. When Dementus asked where there was a water source, the boy pointed directly to a distant fortress, claiming it was well stocked. Starving for days, Dementus eagerly led his army towards it. If Immortan Joe knew his war boys had led the enemy here, he might die of rage. The vast army surged towards the citadel, and the slaves living there hid in fear. Hundreds of motorcycles revved their engines simultaneously, creating a deafening roar, clearly trying to intimidate the citadel's inhabitants. Dementus, like a king, began to give a speech, inciting the slaves to join him in taking the citadel, promising to share its resources with them. But this time, Dementus had picked the wrong fight. The citadel's owner was the tyrant of the wasteland Immortan Joe. Joe didn't even bother to respond to Dementus's provocation, merely sending his subordinates to negotiate. Joe's subordinates asked Dementus to choose one person from the warboys above. Though puzzled, Dementus ordered an old man beside him to make the selection. The chosen warboy sprayed chrome painting into his mouth, held 2 javelins, and leaped without hesitation. There were thousands of such loyal warboys, all ready to sacrifice for Joe. Thus, the battle began, with the warboys throwing bombs from above, plunging Dementus's army into chaos. Unable to reach the high ground, they could only take the hits. Hooks descended to seize their motorcycles. And Furiosa was almost taken. The heavily damaged army eventually fled in disgrace, but the vengeful Dementus couldn't swallow this defeat. He learned that Joe's strength came from two fortresses, one supplying weapons and ammunition, Bullet Farm, and the more crucial Gastown, producing vast amounts of fuel daily. Dementus then set his sights on Gastown. The next day, a transport truck had just left Gastown when it was ambushed by Dementus's army. They seized a large amount of fuel from the truck, but Dementus wasn't satisfied. He covered several men in white mud and ordered them to drive the transport truck back to Gastown. Dementus and his army followed, pretending to chase the truck. Gastown sentries reported this to their leader. Dementus's performance was flawless, but the cautious leader hesitated, noticing the war boys had grown hair. When Gastown's people didn't fall for the ruse, Dementus ordered his men to make the fight real. Seeing the war boys getting injured, Gastown's leader finally believed and opened the gate to let the transport truck in. Apparently, the people of the wasteland had forgotten the story of the Trojan horse. Warriors emerged from under the truck, quickly taking control of the gate and watchtower. Gastown fell into Dementus's hands.
Open the gates.
Soon after, Dementus sent Joe a gift, a finger from Gastown's leader. Enraged, Joe wanted to kill Dementus, but Dementus was prepared. If he didn't return to Gastown by nightfall, his men would blow up the entire place. Joe was furious but helpless. Just as Joe couldn't give up Gastown's fuel, Dementus needed Joe's water and food. So he proposed a long-term trade, Gastown's fuel for Joe's supplies. Joe initially refused this humiliating deal but then saw Furiosa in the crowd. Due to nuclear radiation, Joe's 3 children were dwarfs and mentally disabled. Furiosa looked pure and healthy, so Joe wanted to keep her to breed healthy offspring. With Furiosa as leverage, the deal was made. Furiosa was confined to a secret place where all the women were Joe's breeding tools, but all the children born so far were deformed.
Sorry, boss.
Even Joe's foolish son set his sights on Furiosa. Realizing her perilous situation, Furiosa secretly cut her hair to make a wig, planning to escape. As expected, Joe's foolish son took Furiosa away under the cover of night, eager to admire her beautiful hair. But the next second, when the foolish son chased her, Furiosa had disappeared. Afraid of being exposed, he discarded the wig, not realizing Furiosa was hiding below. Furiosa didn't escape the citadel. She disguised herself as a boy and worked as a mechanic. During an emergency repair, she showed exceptional skills and courage, gaining her superior's favor. She was also entrusted with an important task, participating in the construction of a monstrous war rig. Captain Jack of the Guards would drive it to escort supplies. They were to head to Bullet Farm to load supplies and then trade with Dementus. Furiosa secretly hid under the vehicle and followed them out. Halfway, they were ambushed, exchanging bombs in a fierce battle. Unexpectedly, the attackers included air support, and the war boys on the rig suffered heavy casualties. But the war boys' suicide attacks also overwhelmed the enemy. A runaway motorcycle nearly hit Furiosa, damaging one of the rig's engines. Jack's assistant went to repair it and found the fuel line had been cut. The enemy had powered paragliders, regaining air superiority. Jack's assistant was hit by a Molotov cocktail and fell. Knowing he was doomed, he entrusted the repair to Furiosa. Suddenly, an enemy planted a bomb under the rig. Furiosa crawled over to disarm it but was stopped by the enemy. Seeing this, the war boy on the rig used a mechanical claw to throw the motorcycle under the wheels, crushing it. But as the vehicle slowed down, the enemy had already surrounded the war rig, forcing Jack to drive and shoot back simultaneously. Just as Furiosa finished repairing the engine, another unexpected event occurred. A corpse slid down from the rig, knocking off the radiator cap. Furiosa immediately lit explosives, aiming to blow up the vehicles obstructing the repair. Sure enough, these albino warriors were all madmen. Furiosa then repositioned the radiator cap, preventing the war rig from overheating and breaking down. At this point, only Jack and Furiosa were left alive on the vehicle. Their teamwork was surprisingly seamless, and together, they were nearly unbeatable. However, the enemy had too many tricks up their sleeves, even using gliders. The gliders were not only fast and hard to hit but also heavily armed. So, Furiosa used a mechanical claw to grab this annoying glider as it swooped down. But then, a flying motorcycle joined the battle. Furiosa quickly used a harpoon launcher to turn the flying motorcycle into a kite. Taking advantage of the enemy reloading, Furiosa rushed forward and activated the whirlwind hammer at the rear of the war rig, shredding the kite into pieces. After eliminating all the enemies, Furiosa pointed the gun at Jack. In this wasteland, the only person you could trust was yourself. Of course, Jack wouldn't hand over the vehicle. He slammed on the brakes and pushed her out of the car. Furiosa let out a roar of frustration, feeling trapped with nowhere to go. Just as she was feeling lost, she heard Jack's voice behind her.
Where did you think you were going?
Jack was still relishing the incredible unspoken understanding they had shared. Beyond the exhilarating thrill of fighting side by side, he was also struck by the stubborn hatred in Furiosa's eyes.
It's been a hard day. I lost my convoy. I lost my crew. I'm gonna have to start again, and I'm driving off thinking I ought to start with you.
Thus, Furiosa became Jack's new partner. When the reinforcements sent by Joe arrived, they continued their journey to Bullet Farm. Large quantities of bullets and vegetables were loaded onto the vehicle, showcasing the abundance of resources here, one of the keys to Joe's dominance in the wasteland. On the way to Gastown for the trade, Jack promised that Furiosa could leave after the mission, with a car and supplies already prepared for her. When they arrived at Gastown, Furiosa saw her enemy Dementus. An uncontrollable killing intent surged within her. Fortunately, Jack appeared in time to stop her from losing control. Unexpectedly, Dementus reneged on the deal. Not only did he refuse to give Jack fuel, but he also allowed his men to seize all the supplies Jack had brought. Dementus told Jack to relay a message to Joe, demanding a higher price for the trade to continue. Upon hearing this, Joe's men were furious and suggested killing Dementus. No one noticed that Furiosa was the missing girl from years ago. Joe decided to reclaim Gastown and ordered Jack to go to Bullet Farm to prepare weapons and ammunition. So they set off again, and halfway there, Jack suddenly stopped the vehicle. He then placed Furiosa in a small escort car, where he had already prepared a motorcycle and provisions for her. Clearly, Jack sensed that this mission might not go smoothly, so he left an escape route for Furiosa in advance. When the convoy entered Bullet Farm, Jack noticed an eerie silence. Seeing a dog carrying a severed limb, he sensed something was terribly wrong. It was Dementus's hunting dog, indicating that Dementus had taken over the place. Only Furiosa, at the rear of the convoy, managed to escape before the gate closed, while Jack and the others were trapped in Bullet Farm, fighting desperately. Soon, all the war boys were killed or injured, leaving only Jack clinging to life under Furiosa's cover. But Furiosa was also targeted, with fierce firepower pinning her down. Jack immediately reversed the vehicle, helping Furiosa out of her predicament. Knowing his fate was sealed, he fired a flare into the sky, signaling Furiosa to escape. But Furiosa couldn't allow herself to do that. Just as she hadn't abandoned her mother who protected her, she wouldn't leave her companion who helped her. Jack continued to drive the war rig, maneuvering to outwit Dementus's men, while Furiosa set up a sniper rifle to cover him. Her incredible marksmanship saved Jack multiple times, even preventing Dementus from showing his face. However, Furiosa underestimated Dementus's ruthlessness. Seeing this, Jack was furious and rammed the watchtower with the vehicle, but unfortunately, he couldn't kill Dementus. As the protagonist, Furiosa naturally wouldn't exit the scene. She got up and saw Jack in trouble. Jack tried to break through the blockade ahead, but the war rig's tail hammer got entangled with a crane. A tremendous force dragged Jack and the war rig towards the cliff edge, and at the last moment, barely escaping death, Jack jumped onto Furiosa's motorcycle, and together they rushed to the gate. They then switched to a car and quickly fled. Meanwhile, Dementus, having escaped danger, he couldn't wait to get his revenge, even ramming the obstructing gate with his vehicle and leading his men in pursuit of Jack and Furiosa. Relying on his car's superior performance, Dementus took a shortcut over a hill, catching up to them. And so began a thrilling and perilous chase. Jack turned to shoot Dementus, but his car was equipped with bulletproof glass. Furiosa sharply turned the steering wheel, kicking up a cloud of dust, disorienting Dementus. But this only bought them a little time. Dementus's car was not only better performing but also had 2 more wheels than theirs. Caught up again, Jack and Furiosa were forced into a fierce battle. Outnumbered, Jack was shot, and Furiosa's arm was severely injured. Dementus's war rig, like a savage beast, trampled their fragile bodies, shattering their hopes of escape. dragged from the vehicle. Jack and Furiosa awaited the tyrant's punishment. Jack was tied behind a motorcycle and dragged in circles, with hunting dogs constantly chasing and biting him. Meanwhile, Furiosa was chained to a car, forced to watch her companion die in front of her, just as she had watched her mother die. Dementus enjoyed the brutal show until dusk. However, as he prepared to return, he found only a lone arm dangling from the chain. Furiosa had escaped under the cover of the motorcycle's dust cloud, leaving a little surprise for Dementus before she vanished. Despite sending many pursuers, Furiosa managed to shake them off. On a distant dune, a man watched Furiosa. This was likely Max and Furiosa's first encounter. Back at the Citadel, Furiosa wasted no time in telling Joe about the fall of Bullet Farm. She added that Dementus had taken grappling hooks and ladders, making it clear that his next target was the Citadel. However, Joe's son didn't believe her, thinking Dementus was still in Gastown after seeing the explosion there. Joe's army soon set off for Gastown. Seeing their convoy kicking up dust, Dementus assumed it was Joe's main force. Pleased with his plan's success, Dementus had deliberately blown up Gastown to lure Joe away, planning to attack the Citadel while it was weakly defended. He even used precious freshwater to cover his army's tracks. Excited, Dementus urged his army to march towards the Citadel, confident it was already his. However, two signal flares suddenly exploded in the sky, shattering his illusions. Joe's main force turned back, revealing only a few cars and people. It was a decoy force. Dementus's plan had fooled Joe's foolish son, but not Joe himself. Joe had decided to use the same plan against Dementus, sending a small convoy to kick up dust and appear formidable. And so, when Dementus carelessly led his army into Joe's carefully laid trap, his fate was sealed. A brutal wilderness battle ensued, meant to be the story's grandest moment, though not depicted in the film. During this time, Furiosa crafted a mechanical arm, waiting for her chance for revenge. News of Dementus's defeat and retreat soon reached her. Furiosa prepared to pursue him but found all the vehicles had been taken to the battlefield. An old man helped her find a tricycle.
Isn't she wonderful?
But at that speed, she wouldn't catch Dementus until the next movie. Fortunately, Joe's foolish son had just repaired a car, which Furiosa promptly commandeered, leaving the son chasing after her.
What was that?
That is the darkest of angels.
Dementus, now with only a few followers, fled, but Furiosa's sniper bullets pursued them like the Grim Reaper. The intense fear and tension had drained Dementus's will to fight, leaving only the thought of escape. Seeing Dementus's men scatter, Furiosa first pursued Dementus's personal vehicle. The guards immediately tried to stop her. After eliminating all obstacles, Furiosa saw the man's face in the vehicle. Dementus, as cunning as ever, the old man was just one of his many decoys. Furiosa braked and reversed just in time, avoiding being sucked into quicksand with him. She then saw another decoy with a wig being attacked by bandits, leaving the correct option clear. But in his panic, Dementus ran into a sandstorm. Waking to calm weather, Dementus found his water bag cut, sending chills down his spine. Furiosa appeared behind him like a ghost. He instinctively raised his gun, finding the magazine empty like the water bag. Dementus asked why Furiosa hadn't killed him in his sleep. Furiosa didn't answer, planning to show him. Dementus scrambled to escape, his former arrogance as a leader gone, while Furiosa followed in her car. When he approached the car, it reversed to keep distance. Furiosa toyed with Dementus like a cat with a mouse until he was exhausted. Dementus finally recognized Furiosa.
You crawled out of a pitiless grave deeper than hell.
He flattered her while eyeing the knife in her shoe, but only resulted in him being played for a fool. He was destined never to become a tyrant like Joe because he was nothing more than a blustering, cunning rat. Dementus was soon awakened by a splash of water. Furiosa's revenge had only just begun. She inflicted all the pain and torment that her mother and Jack had endured back onto Dementus. But even that wasn't enough to quench Furiosa's thirst for vengeance. She planted the peach pit she had brought from the oasis into Dementus's body. The peach tree grew, continuously drawing nutrients from his body until he died. Ironically, Dementus, who had spent his life plundering others, was ultimately plundered by a plant. After completing her revenge, Furiosa planned to secretly take these poor women, reduced to breeding tools, back to the Green Place. She was about to embark on Fury Road with Max.